November 1st, of course, election day. My guest is Gerald Tremblay, the mayor of Montreal, running for his third term. You've been accused of running a secretive City Hall. Is that true?
No, it's transparent. Everything we do is transparent. Even when they talk about the executive committee, we have the meeting on Wednesdays, and the following morning, everything is on the internet site of the City of Montreal. So we're not secretive. On the contrary, I think that because of what we started to talk about, if I've been secretive, I haven't done nothing. In other words, I would have hidden the fact that there are irregularities at the City of Montreal. In a sense, I'm a little bit, because I made them public. People are sometimes criticizing, and Louise Arel is using that to say that there's corruption at the City of Montreal.
Now, you're saying it's a very transparent administration, but on the other hand, when it came to that water meter contract, $355 million, it was passed in less than 1 minute.
Yeah, because everyone voted for it. Even the opposition, and Benoit Labonté. So remember, Arel Labonté, he did not even ask one question. And we had an agglomeration council, and the agglomeration...
Well, I think many citizens are angry at all of the parties for not asking questions about that, whether it's your party or the opposition, when it doesn't come to asking a lot of questions about $355 million. It's a lot of money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right. And the information we had, the Auditor General says it very clearly in his report. It was not all the information. If we would have had all the information, maybe the decision would have been different. And as a result of that, I think that there's work to do to put in place more transparency from the public servants to the elected representatives, and most of all, to put in place mechanisms where we'll get all that information and we'll make it public. Then we'll take a better decision in the future.
My guest is Gerald Tremblay, running for his third term. If you win this third term, Mr. Tremblay, what would you do differently?
First of all, I continue to do what we've been doing. This is very important. When we talk about the infrastructures, everyone talks about potholes, and now they're talking about gridlock because there's over 200 major works in the City of Montreal. Housing was a very, very important issue. There's no more crisis of housing today. Public finances are better managed than in the past. Public transit, we've increased public transit financing by 40%. What would I do differently? I would make less confidence in people. In other words, and
you trust them less?
No, it's not a question of trust. It's a question. A nun told me that. Imagine a nun told me that when I went to see her. She says, "You're a good guy, but you should not trust people the same way that you trust them." And I think she's right. If I'm responsible for everything in the past, I will make sure that I get all the facts, and that is a lesson for the future.
Well, I think that nun was right. That's why my second question to you is, do you trust people too much? Looking back at the 7 years, what do you regret most in your term of office?
Not much. I think we have a fantastic team of dedicated people that have a lot of experience, and we still have that team for the next mandate. And I think that we have to continue to work in a very positive way. And in that sense, criticism is always welcome as long as it comes with solutions. You can criticize, but what do? It's very easy, and I did that in my past when I was not elected. I was in my living room and I was criticizing politicians. But it's very difficult when you're there and you have to find concrete solutions to answer the real needs of citizens.
Well, Madame Arel and Mr. Labonté have found one concrete solution. They want to bring Expo to Montreal in 2020. Is that a good idea?
They should have spoken to David Miller, the mayor of Toronto. In 2015, he tried that. He wanted it in 2015. It's a $4.3 billion budget with a deficit of $700 million. David Miller went to the federal government. They said no. He went to the provincial, the Ontario government. They said no. So I'm not going back in the past to create more deficits. I think one of the problems with the City of Montreal, we're in debt, and as a result of that, if you go back to Expo 67 in the Olympic Games, we're still carrying that debt, and we had an actual deficit, and we were instrumental in correcting that situation. There's no way I'm going to go for 2020. However, in 2017, we have the 375th anniversary of the City of Montreal, the 150th anniversary of the Confederation, the 50th anniversary of Man in His World, and as a result of that, we're mobilizing our citizens to do things that are not as big, but very concrete that will improve the quality of life. For example, Vision 2017 for natural museums. I think biodiversity is important. Quality of life is important. We're doing the same thing with the Lachine Canal, investments that are structural with the governments, but also with the private sector.
What achievements, looking at the past few years, past 7 years, what achievements are you most proud of?
I think democracy, the first one. I think there's more democracy at the City of Montreal. There's more commissions at the City Council. There's an ombudsperson. There's a public consultation board. I think that's very positive. We have a Charter of Rights and Responsibility that tells citizens you have a voice in the City of Montreal, and the power of one is very important. Second thing, a transportation plan. Investing in public transit. I think if we want to fight greenhouse gas emissions, we have to invest in public transit. The Big C is very important. Now we're exporting Big C to London, 6,000
Are we making money on that?
It's not a question of making money, it's a question of balancing the budget. And as a result of that, when we sell our patents to London or to Boston or to other cities in the world, we're getting revenues, and that should balance our budget. So that's an important. Le Quartier des Spectacles. I think that culture is very important in Montreal, and we're seeing now that Le Quartier des Spectacles is very positive and will be finished by 2012. And we still have major projects, leveling Haute-Route Bonaventure, that will generate investments from the private sector of $1.5 billion. Let's not forget the private sector. Our responsibility is to create the environment. And if we create the environment like we've been doing, you know, Tommy, that we're the 20 metropolis in North America, we're the ones that is going the best throughout this economic slowdown. Nothing is perfect, but we're the best metropolis and the 20th biggest metropolis in North America. So we must be. It's because of the decisions that we've taken. Essentially, when we invested last year $600 million in our infrastructures, underground in our roads, I think that creates jobs. And as a result of that, it improves productivity. Gridlock costs $1 billion for citizens in Montreal. And as a result of that, we're doing our best with limited funds, but the fact that we're creating economic development and jobs is very important for Montreal.
We're going to talk about the F1, the blue-collar workers planning their one-day strike. We have more questions for Mayor Gerald Tremblay. He's running for the mayor. The election, of course, on the 1st of November. Do make a point of voting. We're discussing the blue-collar workers. They're planning another one-day strike for tomorrow. When it comes to negotiating with the blue-collar workers, who do you think would do a better job? Why do you think you would do a better job than Madame Arel?
Definitely, because I've been asking the question to Madame Arel, what would you do? Would you give them $100 million? And at City Council, they were sitting hand in hand last time. So in the past, administrations at the last minute would give more money to the blue-collar workers, and then they have to go back and see the white-collar workers, the firefighters, and the policemen and women, and have to give them more. And that costs a lot of money. And I think that we have to look at what is reasonable. And if 18,000 workers have accepted that, why not the blue-collar workers? Today, they're giving leaflets in all houses, and tomorrow they're going to strike. And they're saying, you know what they're saying? We're there for you. If we're there for you, it means that you have to be productive and you have to answer the real needs of citizens, improving the quality of life. Is it by having a 4-hour strike, or like they had on the 35th of August, another strike? I think that they should be at the negotiation table, find something that is reasonable, that respects the capacity to pay of taxpayers, and then we'll say yes.
Do they think they can get more money out of Madame Arel than they can get out of you?
Definitely. And I'm not going to give them more money that I don't have, and money that the taxpayers don't want to pay more.
The blue-collar workers, do you think they're going to, as a result that they could get more money from Madame Arel, do you think they'll be siding with Madame Arel?
Well, I think that the day that you use, about 15 days before the electoral vote, you send out 800,000, maybe $1 million leaflets, and you start talking about centralization, pro-centralization. Who's for pro-centralization? Louise Arel. And you're talking about productivity. And as a result of that, I think that we're better off to continue to negotiate. But once again, I just want to clear this, Tommy. It's not all blue-collar workers. I think that if we looked at what has happened last year for snow removal in difficult times, they did a very good job. And I don't want to characterize the blue-collar workers. On the contrary, I want to respect them, but I want them to respect the capacity to pay of our taxpayers.
In addition to the unions, we talked about the unions, why they've been without a contract so long. I want to get off the unions for a second to talk about the F1. How's your friend Bernie Ecclestone? Is everything okay with that deal?
I've known Bernie for 30 years, so I know exactly how he acts. It's we're looking at it as a business deal. Is it good for Montreal? Is it good for our taxpayers? Is it good for the economy of Montreal? So if we have to invest the $15 million that we're talking about, it has to generate for governments revenues that are more important than that. And because just look at what happened last year. We didn't have them. What did the hotels say? What did the retail, what did the restaurants say? And as a result of that, we lost the revenue. So what do? We do nothing, we lose the revenue, or we invest part of that revenue to secure an international event that gives a lot of credibility for Montreal. We're negotiating, no deal is finalized, and we'll see what happens within the next couple of days.
Ted sent a text message. He wants to know, if you care about public transit, why do you not push for air-conditioned buses? Some of us are occasional transit users. Make it more comfortable. Maybe more people would use the system more often.
It's possible, but we need more buses, and that's why we have 202 articulated buses. And if we have to, it's $200,000 per bus. It's $54,000 more if we want air conditioning. So we decided, first of all, to improve the more buses, and as a result of that, more frequency. But we'll get there eventually. And the metro, for example, the new cars in the metro should be air conditioned. And yes, we're trying to improve, but we can't do everything at the same time. We've invested $100 million more in public transit, and we have to invest more in the future.
You've accused Madame Morel of Montreal bashing. How is she doing that?
Well, she hates Montreal because she says, I feel bad for Montreal. That's what she says all the time. I feel good for Montreal. When I wake up in the morning, I'm happy to be a mayor of Montreal, and I'm looking for
you feel
concrete
that Madame Morel
solution.
hates Montreal?
What she's saying, she's Montreal bashing all the time. She says, I feel bad for Montreal. So if you bash Montreal all the time, what does it mean for Montreal? And I'm asking her, what do you do for Montreal? Aside from putting in place more structures and going in the past, what would you do for quality of services, for what I said before? And I have no answer.
Now, when you're talking about the quality of services here in Montreal, is it also important for a mayor to represent the city in the rest of Canada, in the rest of North America, in the United States, in the rest of the world? Why would you do a better job about that than with Madame Morel?
Okay. I was too fast on saying that she hates Montreal, okay? She doesn't hate Montreal. I think she has a love for Montreal, a different love than I have for Montreal. I want to qualify that, because if she's running, it's because she wants to do something good for Montreal. So as the Article 1 of the Charter of the City of Montreal says that we're a Francophone city. And as a result of that, she's entitled to run if she doesn't speak well English. But I think it's a major asset to speak English. And when I talk to Bernie Ecclestone, it's much easier for me to do it than to do it by someone else. But it's an asset for us, Francophones or Anglophones, to learn more languages. That's why our children are mostly or starting to be trilingual.
You're listening to Mayor Tremblay, re-election for re-election, November the 1st. I keep reminding you that is the election date. Mayor Tremblay, what would you want to change about Montreal?
I want to reinvent Montreal. I think that Montreal has been done very good things in the past decades, but now we have to compare Montreal to major metropolis throughout North America and throughout the world. So there's a lot of things that have to be improved. That's why what we're saying, we have to continue to create, we have to continue to innovate, we have to continue to build, and we have to move forward. That's what we're proposing. We're proposing moving forward, and as a result of that, we have all the assets in Montreal to be very successful. I told you a couple of minutes ago that we're the North American metropolis that is going through the economic crisis in the best way possible, even though it's difficult. Why? Because for years we talked about information technology, life science cluster, we talked about aerospace, we're talking about environmental issues, we're talking about public transit. We've got everything to succeed, and that's why a third mandate is important. We want to build on what we've been instrumental in doing for the past 4 years. I don't want to go back for another debate about 8 years, about mergers, demergers, reorganization. I think that Montrealers, they want two things. They want economic development, because if we had economic development, we have jobs, and we have more money to invest in quality of services, and this is what we stand for.
Has Montreal received its fair share of the stimulus spending from the federal government?
I think that the federal government has definitely given us major support. For example, the Quartier des Spectacles, it's $40 million. They gave us $30 million for the Gare de Triage à Outremont, and they're giving us whatever they can for other major projects that are important for Montreal. But we'd like to get more, and that's why we have to negotiate with the Quebec government, because it's not only the federal government. The federal government has a fund, the Quebec government has funds, and now we're negotiating, and I think that we're getting reasonable investments from the federal and the provincial government for Montreal.
What's the most difficult part of your job?
Oh, I think it's. Do you really want to know?
Yes, yes. I really want to know. Tell me the truth.
I spend a lot of time managing the medias.
The media. We're the most difficult party.
No, because every morning we walk up. I like going to City Hall. We work all the time, but medias are hands-on, and that's okay. That keeps us honest. And as a result of that, but we have to manage the medias, because I learned one thing in politics when I was first elected in 2002. I said, oh no, medias are not that important, so I have to work at City Hall, I have to restructure the city, etc. And suddenly I found out that if I don't give information to the medias and that I don't talk to them, they're going to invent things. And suddenly I was reading the medias, they were inventing things. So I said, no, this is finished. Now what I've learned in politics is that I have to meet the medias on a regular basis to explain what we're doing, to change the perception.
Do you feel you're fairly treated by the media?
It depends which medias. Tommy, yes. Okay? I think you're okay.
All right. I'm okay. That's good. I'll put that on my
It's not
resume.
bad for a Tuesday morning.
Some people feel that boroughs have way too much power. Is that true?
No, I don't think so. I think that there's adjustments that have to be put in place. Ville-Marie borough had too many powers. That's why the city was instrumental in convincing the Quebec government that the borough now will be the Ville-Marie borough, so the downtown area will be the responsibility of the mayor of Montreal. I think they had too much power. Second thing, if there's strategic issues, snow removal, for example, I think that we can now take on that responsibility, and that's another change. Urbanism. When we have major projects throughout the City of Montreal, do we need a better urban planning team at the City of Montreal? The answer is yes, but not to pick up a permit. I think you can get your permit when you're in a borough. So there's changes, but we're doing that slowly without going back in a debate about structures.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Would you come back and speak to us on November the 2nd, no matter what happens?
Yes.
Okay. We've got that on record. Thank you very much. A pleasure speaking to you. Mayor Gerald Tremblay has been our guest. You're listening to Tommy Schnurmacher on CJAD.